So that's changing how we then come up with ideas. And so this is a different way of thinking about innovation. Well, are there many contributors to innovation or few contributors? If you go on, this here is where a lot of sort of high value innovation has taken place. There are few contributors, but few benefit. Up here you get sort of industrial innovation. Well, it comes from a few people, but they make it at a great scale, and many people benefit because they buy lots of products. But the really interesting spaces are going to be these spaces over here where there are potentially many contributors. So whether to corporate open innovation or to community open source. So what And so you turn something that's just a sort of delivery channel into something that's a community. And the community is building this constant interaction of knowledge. And the important thing I think about this kind of way of seeing the world is that it's not going to be all over there. It's about the combination of all these things. So that if you look at Apple and what Apple's good at. Apple is very, very good at very high-end innovation design. It makes industrial products, but it's also managed to kind of create this community around its products. So if you used Apple as a sort of template of success, it's doing a lot of this at the same time. That's what education systems will have to do if they're going to get this combination of low-cost, high engagement. So if you go on, yeah. So that has an impact on social change because it gives you a little grid that looks like this. So do you want to have a big impact or a small impact? That's sort of basic question of innovators. And do you want to invest a lot, big stuff, or small stuff? And then it gives you this. And the general kind of feeling has been, well, to get a big impact, you need to invest in big stuff. You need infrastructure, buildings, all sorts of things. You need capital. It's a big undertaking. And it's a big undertaking in education because of that equation of scale and reach that you showed earlier, which is you've got a physical classroom. To get more people, you need more teachers, more buildings, more books. This is a very costly kind of undertaking. So lots of innovation actually ends up down here. It ends up with sort of everyday life, if you like. Most of life, we want really to stay relatively small scale. And this is one of the challenges with education, which is that education has to really connect with people's everyday lives. It has to integrate into their lives. This up here, where you spend lots of money, but you have a small impact. This is the British government's experience of its own IT programs. The British government has spent, hundreds of millions of pounds on IT programs that deliver virtually nothing. So there's a great, this is not about central government, there was a great thing about Birmingham City Council, that Birmingham City Council had banned its employees from using Facebook, but then admitted that its revamp of its website had gone over budget and they'd already spent £18 million on it. Well, the answer would be you get much, much more bang for your buck if you just allowed people to use Facebook, because Facebook is a platform for low-cost creation of content. So big stuff with big impact, you can find things over there, infrastructures for mass engagement, mobile phone platforms, physical regeneration platforms. But the really interesting stuff is down here, where you get a big impact for a small investment. And so that has a really powerful dynamic, because then potentially those people that we saw earlier, you could reach them, engage them, provide things to them, get their contributions at much smaller cost. So that then finally, I think, should change the way that we think about systems, including education systems. So if you divide the world into things that are very systematic, McDonald's is extremely systematic, Starbucks is very systematic, Google is incredibly systematic. Systematic things are explicit, calculable, repeatable, they're kind of engineered. And low systems are a beautifully made meal or something haute couture fashion or something tailored, bespoke, particular. And then if you divide the world in whether your experience of it has high empathy, so you feel a real connection with other people, or low empathy, you don't feel any connection with other people, you get a world that looks a bit like this. So if you think about it, this is the space you definitely don't want to be in. This is low system and low empathy. This is the world, if you've ever seen the television series The Wire, which is a description of inner city Baltimore, there are no systems that work. The public sector doesn't work in really poor places. There's no big private sector. So there are no systems, but also because there are no systems, actually levels of empathy and trust are very low as well. So you can't, in The Wire, people are always shooting one another even though they're members of the same family. So this is also where I went to school. So the school that I went to, the Vine Comprehensive School, there were no systems. It was complete chaos. And there was very little empathy. I mean, it was just the one thing that I really learned well at the Vine Comprehensive School was how to run really fast when I needed to. But apart from that, I didn't learn very much. So you don't want to be there. So you could go up here, and in response to being down here, the sense is, well, let's go up there, and you can then get systems which, okay, you don't get much empathy, but at least you get efficiency. So if you've ever been on Ryanair, this is what going on Ryanair is like. It's completely, I mean, it's very efficient, but don't expect any empathy whatsoever. Now, that's dangerous because actually you might be able to do that with airlines, but doing it with education is really dangerous. But there is a part of what's happened to education that is driving people in that direction, which is to say we can't trust teachers, we can't allow variability, we need really rigorous systems to test and account and provide pedagogy and so on and so forth. And so there are people who've gone in that direction. I would say the KIPP schools in America, are really well-intentioned and have gone in that direction. I don't know if they've gone too far, but they've certainly gone in that direction, which is there's too much variability in education, there's too much poor teaching. What we need is a system to make sure that people learn maths and literacy and so on and so forth. So it might be better than being down here, but it's not perfect. So down here, you can have things which are high on empathy, but low on system. Homeschooling is down here. This is kind of life lived by the Waltons, where everyone knows one another, but there's no electricity, there's no communications. You live in a sort of small village, and it's high on empathy, but low on system. So a lot of people around the world live in situations like that, where they're cut off in relatively small and isolated communities, which are high on empathy, but they lack access to systems. So I think the really interesting space is up there, which is systems that support relationships, systems that are capable of both being efficient and rigorous, but also highly relational and social. And when you look at, you were talking earlier about learning, when you look at teachers who can engage students in ways that gets beyond surface learning into deeper kinds of learning, what is critical is this relationship. They are systematic, but they're also highly empathetic. Or to put it incredibly crudely, when I ask my 11-year-old what a good teacher is, he will say someone who's really nice to be with and good fun, but who can keep control of the class and get stuff done. And that is a perfect combination, in a way, of system, we're going to get stuff done, but also empathy and relationships. And so then if you take that up to the level not just of the individual teacher, but the entire system, that's what good schools are like, that's what good education systems should be like. Where do you find things like that? Well, you certainly find them if you go to High Tech High, charter school set up in San Diego, Larry Rosenstock. You certainly find it there, because what you find there is a culture where people work really, really hard and have lots of fun. And they learn lots and lots and lots, but they have a great time whilst they're doing it. Or if you go and look at Pratham in India, which is this incredible NGO providing preschool learning for now millions of children through a very low-cost route. It's a system to provide relationships, basically. It's a kind of systematic, planned way to create empathy so that children learn before they go to school. And the sort of tragedy of India is that they then go to school systems which are essentially over on the left-hand side. I mean, and actually too much of public education in India is probably too low system, too little empathy. It's kind of rote learning. It's of the worst kind. But the systems of the future, I think, aren't going to be industrial. They aren't going to be low empathy systems. They're going to be high empathy. They build relationships, but they also do it very systematically. And that is the appeal of the web, that the web is a system for empathy, basically. At its best. It's a system for building relationships, which allows us to do that. And the really powerful thing, I think, about the YMP and similar programs, of which now there are more and more, is understanding that trick, is understanding when you can do it. Because if you just have lots and lots of people involved, but no structure, then you get kind of quite enthusiastic, energetic chaos. But if you have too much structure and too little engagement, you don't get the energy. And somehow it's providing a kind of structured environment in which people with different backgrounds, views and problems come together. And that is a really powerful kind of model that isn't just important for sustainability, and nor is it just important for education. It's actually important for civil society, a model where we can be diverse but connected and learn from one another. And that's what is happening, or should be happening, in that space up the top. And that's what the YMP, I think, is doing, why it's in its way, a very, very important model of what learning could be in future.